Hello, everybody. You read the title, you saw the thumbnail. Yes, that was an Amphibia reference.
Hello, everybody.
We are here, we are back, as promised, for the Inktober video. We're going to be going on a journey through all of my Inktober drawings. This was the first time I ever tried this challenge, and it was a lot of fun. So before we actually start with the ink drawings, me and a few people I know from the Animator Guild community actually decided to mix in a bunch of daily animations with our ink drawings. So some days we would animate, some days we would do ink drawings. This is only the ink drawings. So that's why you'll notice a bunch of them will be missing, because I decided to do animations that day. So I'll actually have all the animations at the end of this video. Woo! With all that, let's actually start talking about this. So day one, right? So I've never done Inktober. I'm like, well, let's start off easy. Let's start off with something, simple characters. I decided to go Sanrio characters. For who anyone isn't a total nerd, that's Hello Kitty and Friends. I haven't actually ever really drawn Sanrio characters, so this was pretty interesting because they are super simple, but because they're simple, if you get anything wrong, it's kind of really bad. You can see a lot of how I drew this here. I used a red pencil and then I inked over it with this swaggy, cool ink brush. I don't know how to pen spin. I would say I'm sorry, but I'm not going to apologize for not knowing how to pen spin. The story behind this, so the prompt for day one is mustache. And I have a false memory of a Hello Kitty t-shirt that I saw in a video essay that said mustache to meet you. It never said mustache to meet you. It always said I mustache you a question. I had Hello Kitty with a mustache. But for some reason, my mind just thought, oh yeah, that's what that funny t-shirt said. And so I drew what I thought it said, which is pretty fun because it makes this drawing very unique. The two bunnies over here, Melody and Kuromi, they are looking at the Netherlands. It's the Netherlands, I believe, in German, because I think Kuromi is supposed to be German. At the very least, she sometimes cooks German food. But there's a story behind this, so the reason these two bunnies are wearing bonnets is actually because Sanrio, the company that makes Hello Kitty and Friends, got sued by Dutch people who were in the Netherlands, and they had their children's story with rabbits that had a very similar cutesy design. And apparently, I guess they lost that lawsuit. I don't know the exact details of it, but I know that's why they're wearing these, is to distinguish them and make it so they're not infringing on the Dutch people's copyright, which I think is hilarious. So I always call them the copyright infringement bunnies. And over here, we have my favorite Sanrio character, Agretsuko, who I think is a beautiful conceptual contrast of she's so chill, she's so calm, but then she does screamo metal because she still feels anger. And it's from what I saw, it's a great show. I need to watch the rest of it, and it's I really appreciate the commentary on terrible working conditions because that needs to stop. Alrighty, on to day 3. 3 was Crown. And of course, leave it to me to find a way to bring Linkin Park into this, just because the prompt is Crown. So this is a combination of a couple things. So you can probably guess this is not Chester. This is the new singer Emily on the album From Zero. And one of the tracks on there is called Heavy's the Crown. And there's a really cool, very long scream on that track. And there's a live stream where Linkin Park was performing this album for the first time, I think. Don't quote me on that. There's a very elaborate light show going on. And so I tried to capture that here, which I thought was very interesting. So if you notice, there's these, kind of triangular patterns that look like stage lights. And what I did was I inverted the colors. So right here, you see the kind of baggy jacket shirt is white, maybe a little bit of hatching, a little bit of gray. But once the kind of strobe lights hit it, it turns to black. Same for the hair. Hair is normally black, then once a light hits it, it turns white. So I thought that was a pretty interesting solution to the problem, because obviously this is just one illustration. It's just an ink drawing. It's not like an animation where you can literally have a strobing effect. And so I thought it was pretty fun. It was pretty unique. Obviously, this is very exaggerated. Emily does not have hair nearly this long. I think it looks rad as hell. And yeah, if any Linkin Park fans see this, I hope you appreciate it. It was a dope song. On to day 5, we had the prompt deer. And this one's probably going to take a lot of explaining because it's actually from a comic that I'm making that's my own story called Sparks, Light, and Shadows. And this is from, say, 1/3 or halfway through the story. So in my comic, there are these things called dragons or demons, and they are basically an amalgamation between a couple things, but mainly between dragons and mechanical machines. And so they're a little bit of both. This one is one of those monstrosities, and I had the idea that there's this huge walking kind of kaiju tall monster, but it was all made up of these smaller monsters. It was made up of these small deer, and the deer is what was it? I think it was in Hell's Paradise, but I believe it's in Jujutsu Kaisen as well. There's a design choice where for I don't know like what Shinto, or I assume it's Shinto or Buddhist myth, because it's anime and that's what they usually rip off. So where the monster design included a character with horns, but the horns were where the eyes were supposed to be. And so I applied that to deer, these deer, sort of deer-inspired creatures. And then they just all morph together and sort of tower on top of each other and kind of interlock and weave like snakes. This is a very detailed design. It would be a nightmare to animate, but it was very fun. This took me a lot longer than some of the other prompts, probably even longer than some of the animations. But yeah, that is the gist of it. Obviously, you'd have to read the story, which it's not out yet. But yeah, you can sort of see some of the contrasting themes between the more nature creatures and the very kind of mechanical monstrosities. This is also meant to be a radio tower, so you see both the kind of horns, but then all these like antenna are coming out of it. So it's again the kind of mechanical design. And yes, this design is supposed to be horrifying. I guess you can let me know if it's scary or not. On a very different note, I have day 7, which was Starfish. So these are a direct recreation of frames from a film that I really, really liked, a indie short film called A Starfish Story. It actually says it right up here. And what I did was I took frames from that film and I recreated them as if it were a anime production sheet. So this is actually very similar to what a lot of anime studios, you have like, dialogue, any notes. Sometimes you'd have sound effects here. Some of the things I didn't fill out, like scene. There's no runtime, actually. So that is one thing that I didn't write on here. I guess, I'm not sure if this is the time. I think that's time per cut, not the total time of the scene, which should be here. So yeah, that is the kind of format. That's why it's formatted like this, very vertical. So if you look up any storyboards for anime, be it, Ghibli, Studio Pierrot, Toei, it will look somewhat like this. And this was a really meaningful story to me for a lot of reasons. One, because the message is very, very hopeful. It was by Kesh Art. You can look up Kesh Art, or you can look up A Starfish Story. You should definitely watch it. I will actually link it in the description for you. That'll make it easier. And this is just a really hopeful story. But a big thing to me was I think it was made in 72 hours. It was made really fucking fast. And it was made by a very small group of people. Kesh had an animator help for I think a lot of the in-betweens, but I believe he did all the keyframes. And it really reached me. It was a very good short film. It was very emotional, and I really liked it. And it didn't take him, years to make it. So that's been a huge inspiration to me, that you can reach people. Because if I'm being honest, this film does look a little bit rushed. You know, no surprise. You can only do so much in 72 hours. But that didn't matter to me. It still spoke to me on a really deep level. Alrighty, we have some shonen. Because hells yeah, this was day 8. So we're doing less animations, unless I got really tired. So this was Reckless, and I thought, well, basically, all of these characters have been reckless at some point. So for anyone not familiar, who's not a total nerd about 2000s anime or popular anime, this is Luffy, Naruto, and Ichigo from One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, respectively. I did this by memory, and you can tell that I grew up copying Naruto drawings because Naruto's the only one who looks like fully on model. Then, of course, we got a silhouette of Goku from Dragon Ball because Dragon Ball inspired all of 3 of these stories, and they all went on to become insanely successful. But all of these authors who are crazy popular now, they were told, go read Dragon Ball before they started work on their projects. So we kind of have, it's called the Big 3 in the West, it's called the Golden Trio in the East, and Dragon Ball's the grandfather. So yep, that was, you know, I didn't think about it at the time, but it was pretty reckless to draw this from imagination. And here we are. This is not Inktober related, but it was done during the month of October, so I figured I'd show you guys anyway. We got like a little Saiyan warrior monkey guy here. Got some anatomy practice. I was going through a book, which I actually have in this room. I grab it. Have Human Anatomy for Artists. It's a very good book that a friend of mine recommended, and it's pretty cool. I like it a lot. I believe the author uploaded a PDF to Internet Archive if you want the English version. I bought the Chinese version because I just like to have physical media. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I have here a bunch of just heads at different angles, which is pretty funny because I drew them upside down. So if you turn the paper this way, it's like, oh wow, you drew those so well upside down. So just flip the paper. I shan't linger on this too much more, but this is just a ton more anatomy practice. I was doing a lot of torsos, how the upper body connects to the lower body. And then Rukia's here because me and my brother were drawing a bunch of Bleach stuff this night, which was super fun. And we had the model sheets open, so I was trying to copy some of the expressions that are apparently in a bunch of different countries. On to my actual drawing for drink. I'd like to mention I really liked drawing on larger paper. This was gifted to me, I believe, and there's a life drawing, not class, but it was kind of just like an informal club, basically, at this university, and we all met and we did life drawing sessions. It was super chill. And someone just had all this extra paper, and they gifted it to me and a couple other of my friends who were going there, which was very kind of them. So I don't usually draw on paper this big. I usually draw on like A4 or maybe, what is it, yeah, A5? Maybe like one size up from A4. But this is a lot larger. If I actually grab my notebook, you can see exactly how much larger. Yeah, this is the A4 notebook. This is the kind of paper I was drawing on. And I really was enjoying that because it's just a lot more room and you can really get into the details, which is super interesting. I'll actually note here that a lot of people who make manga, you know, you see mangas on these tiny pages like about this big, they draw on paper this big, if not larger, all the time before they scan it in. So a lot of traditional art that is highly, highly detailed actually is very large, which lets people get into the details so much easier, and you just have a lot of room. So I was very appreciative to try out that. This, again, is my original character. This is more stuff from the comic that I was talking about earlier with the deer monster called Sparks, Light, and Shadows. This is our main character, Sparks, and they are up in the sort of Sky Island region. I have right here, I don't know if the camera will even pick this up very well, but I have a coffee bottle. and this little bottle of coffee has been exhausted, and now they're really tired because the caffeine is worn off, and it's pretty emo. Shout out to you if you understand why I spelt coffee wrong on purpose. It is CFVY. You are a legend if you know why. But yeah, on to other things with this. I have a lot of these kind of ruins, which is a big thing in this sky region, and sort of a bit of a grass, so sort of grassy fields, as well as just lots of clouds everywhere. And what I was going for this is actually to have a bit of implied depth. You're supposed to sort of fill in that, yeah, there's more to this region than what I illustrated, which I hope I did well. It's a bit of a thing that you can't really measure. You can't really measure audience participation of, oh yeah, do you personally imagine this? Well, I mean, that's up to you, right? But that was something I decided to start experimenting with. You can see a lot of these just kind of lack of detail, especially on the left side of the page. The scarf is obviously fully drawn, but then you see there's like a lot of grass blades, and there's just a few lines here and there. Yep, that was drink for day 13. Now you can see I was kind of on a roll with my comic OCs here, because for day 14, trunk, I went with a tree trunk, and this is the same character, our main character Sparks. This is actually super meaningful to me because it's a redraw of the first panel, which I can actually put like on screen now, so you can see them side by side. And the main character sort of begins in this evil tree and has been sealed away before they wake up and begin their journey. But this was super fun. I really went chaotic, and you can see, especially with the pencil lines, or you can see with like places like right here, or right here, you can see sort of the bristles of the brush pen that I was using. And when that happens, when it's not just a solid line, we start to see the bristles, that means the brush was moving very fast, or it was running out of ink and you need to replace the ink cartridge. But usually it means you were going very fast. And so I really like that. I like the very jagged and chaotic kind of energy in here, and then there's these sort of sashes that all whoosh around and kind of are holding the character in place. But yeah, this was super fun to me because the panel that I redrew is actually years old at this point. So this was really cool to revisit and sort of see how my art has improved over the years, which was really fun. The other thing is the panel was tiny because it was drawn on a smaller paper, and it's just one panel on a whole page. So it was cool to sort of blow it up and reimagine it on a larger canvas. All right, so we skip day 15, Ragged, and go, because I did animation, and we go straight to day 16, Blunder. So there's not a lot of background, but there's a lot of chaos in this picture, which I like. And this is a direct reference to a game on Steam, which is free, so if you want to check it out, by all means, I'll probably put a link in the description. It's bloody hilarious. It's called FPS Chess, at first-person shooter chess. And you have chess pieces, and you play a normal game, but every time you capture one of the opponent's pieces, you get put into a first-person shooter map. And you start on the board, sort of like on top of the table, but you can actually jump off the table and run around the room. It's really funny. Each of the pieces has their own sort of unique weapon. Like a pawn has a musket, a bishop has a shotgun and a grenade, a knight has a bow and arrow. And they all have unique abilities, and I suppose it's a little bit like Valorant, or I guess Overwatch. Never played Overwatch myself, but I'm pretty sure that's true, where each piece has its own ability. And so if you win the first-person shooter match, you actually destroy the other piece. So if, unlike normal chess, like you capture a piece, so whenever you capture a piece, you start a match, and whoever wins the match wins that contested capture, I guess. Which is it's a very fun game. It's great to mess with your chess friends. If you have any, just be like, hey, let's play this chess game. But yeah, it's good fun. It's very a weird thing. It's hilarious that it exists. But yeah, we have this pawn just completely blowing up a king. We got some bishops with some I guess frag grenades. But yeah, that is Blunder. You blundered. King's taking it out. Day 17. So at this point, I was doing a lot of ink drawing. So I would kind of go in waves, right? So I'd have like, you know, really high motivation. It's like, yeah, let's do a bunch of animations. And then I might do a couple animations, be like, oh god, that's a lot. I want to do some drawing now. And another thing is like for the Goku design that was based on the fan animation, that design is a pretty complicated one. So I wanted to really get into the musculature, which would have been pretty bad for animation. And I'm talking about bad for animation as in bad for a one-day animation. Because keep in mind, all of these drawings had to be done in one day. And if I were to do an animation, the animation had to be done in one day. So this was another one. This is ornate, was the prompt. And so I drew Ruby Rose in a gothic dress. And I tried to make it just as overly detailed and fancy as possible, which I had fun with this. I referenced a couple pictures, including this. I believe it's a Russian artist that just drew Ruby Rose smoking, and she's just so like, I'm done with your shit, and it's such a funny expression. So I know I referenced that among some other pictures. And of course, if you're gonna go goth, you gotta have the plushie. But yeah, I like what I did here with the dress. There's a lot of, one, there's a lot of layers to it, but two, there's a lot of kind of in-between tones where if you move the brush pen very fast, you can get this kind of streak with the bristles and just getting a little bit of ink, which kind of adds a lot of shape and almost highlights to what would have normally just been filled black. One of the many ways you can add depth with black and white. I drew Vash. I don't remember why I drew Vash. It was probably because I was reading Trigun. I believe this is a study, like I was trying to actually recreate the art style. I got pretty close, but I'm sure if I went side by side, there would be a few areas I need to improve on. Now here is a very fun one. Here is Deal, and I do have to explain the backstory behind this because it's not actually immediately obvious why it's related to Deal. So this is the character Jean from the game Ghost of Tsushima, which I have been playing a ton. It's been a huge inspiration to me for not only just storytelling but art direction. It's a very well put together game. I sort of started playing it at a point in my life where I was very kind of bored with a lot of video games and kind of burnt out. This game is really special to me because it kind of was just so damn good that it like reignited my passion for video games, you know, enjoying those kinds of entertainment again. But the character here, Gene, he's wearing this item, this bandana over one eye, which the item name is the Sly Dealer. I thought it was pretty funny to just go for a very niche reference. Only if you play Ghost of Tsushima, when you get that it's related to Dealer. The item description is also hilarious. I believe it says, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it says something along the lines of, never let anyone know where your sights are truly set, which is, it's a good pun, because it covers one of your eyes. But yeah, that was pretty cool. The game has a very photorealistic style, so I tried to go more in the portrait direction, which very, very new to me. I do a ton of anime and comics, and a lot of my art is very hyper optimized for that, hyper stylized. So I don't usually draw like photo accurate humans, but this is pretty fun. I got a lot of fun and enjoyment out of that one. Alright, I have a fun story for this. This is Arctic, day 19. This was done late because I was doing animations, I believe, and I just, you know, I was not having it. I spent all day doing animations that were not related to the Arctic prompt, or something came up, and so I actually had to do this one late. This was the only one that I properly missed. And I did it the next day. I rolled it in with day 20 Rivals, which is the one right below this. But yeah, I drew some Arctic foxes. I drew them a day late. And yeah, it's just these little guys. Very simple on purpose, so I could catch up easier. And I drew the Nefex logo because people mistake it for a fox, which was kind of fun. I do like a lot of his music as well. Now this is one of my favorites because I was looking forward to 2 drawings. One was day 20, Rivals, and the other was day 28, Skeletal, because Skeletal pertained to one of my own original characters. But yeah, day 20, Rivals, I just instantly thought, wait a minute, I've watched all of Naruto, I've watched almost all of Bleach, we could just draw those characters. And so that was just the first thing that popped in my head, having a 4-way split between Ichigo and Uryu, and then Naruto and Sasuke. I just thought that would be the coolest thing ever. I probably will try to do this again because I actually had so much fun doing it that I would like to do it again, but without the 1-day deadline, which is pretty ambitious for me at least, to be doing four full dynamic poses just in a day. Especially considering they're not my designs, I was actually trying to have everybody be on model, which is a challenge in and of itself. When you draw your own character, you have a very intuitive sense often of how things should be, but when you try to draw in a new style, it can be a challenge for sure. I had a little bit of these acrylic markers, which are really cool to do ink drawings. I know you're supposed to not do color, but I kind of cheated a little bit because Inktober is a bit informal of the challenge anyways. There's no reward, it's just you do it because you want to. So I figured, screw it, let's add some color. Manga accurate Rasengan, they changed it to blue in the anime, which I do like. I like the blue Rasengan, but it's fun that fun little trivia for anyone who read the comic that it used to be yellow. Again, you can tell I grew up drawing a lot of Naruto and copying a lot of those because they're slightly more on model, I believe. I did a little better. Unlike the Reckless, so I was not Reckless, I was a Rival this time. I actually pulled up on my phone the model sheets for all 4 of these characters, which, by the way, if you ever want to do fan art, look up the model sheets of a show because they are the guidelines of how the people actually working on the show draw them. And, you can use those as guidelines too. And I hear almost no one say that. And I get it, unless you're really into how these shows are made or animation production, you wouldn't know about that. But now that I do know about it, it seems really silly to not have that as your blueprint, because a lot of people, myself included, will go and look up a bunch of pictures or get a screenshot from the show or something, and they'll base it off that. But there are these very detailed guides to how to draw all these iconic characters out there, and they're just the model sheets for whatever show. I really like this one. I'm very proud of it because while there are definitely some technical errors in certain places with the, say, anatomy or maybe some perspective issues and stuff, but overall, there's a lot of energy. Everybody is recognizable who they are, and it feels very dynamic, which I'm very happy that I was able to get, 4 pretty detailed characters all in, a few hours. I believe I did this in under 3 hours, I think. So for how fast I was going, I feel like I was able to really focus in on what was important and convey a lot of the emotion. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it sideways because it does look pretty cool like that. I'll actually show you from all 4 angles because it sort of depends on we're not gonna do that. Okie dokie, so we are skipping ahead to day 24, Rowdy. Now, I'm not going to talk about this too much, but I will say the general premise. So, I saw the prompt Rowdy, and I was like, well, I should just draw everybody that was in voice chat with me, because that would be funny. And so, a lot of the people in the community, I know I missed a few people, which is very unfortunate, but I drew one of the moderators in the community, which is pretty funny, walking in just like that one scene from the movie that none of us watched. But we saw the guy walking in the room that was set on fire with pizza. So, yeah, it's based on that. There's a ton of people. I won't get into who's who or say any of their usernames because I feel like that's a little bit rude. But yeah, if you were there, thank you. It was really nice to talk to everybody, and I felt a lot of community there. It was really cool to not just be working in silence all the time. Shout out if any of you are watching and you can recognize yourself. Respect. Alrighty, we are on to Skeletal, which is actually the last one. This is all pre-production sketches. So this is me figuring out the pose, copying some other poses, sort of synthesizing. I have an entire mood board for this character because it's one of my original characters actually. And this was just, a full page of planning before this is all the drawing before we start the drawing. I'll explain what the kanji means in a second. So right here, this was the other one. There were two prompts that stuck out to me when I first saw the Inktober prompts, and I decided that I was actually going to do it this month. As I said earlier, Rivals. I just immediately thought of all the shonen homies. And then the second was Skeletal. And this, I am so happy with how this came out. They have a Reaper character. This is definitely my best illustration and depiction that I've drawn of this character so far. Very, very happy. And you can tell that because I did like a whole page of pre-production, this was very important. And I really like how it came out. I feel like the pose is very dynamic. I like the composition, the kind of very like extreme perspective. You know, the character's coming out at you. There's just a lot going on here. And that's really all I'm going to say. And I know that sounds kind of weird. I don't have this big story, even though I could talk about it more, but it's because characters for a comic that is really early in development. And I think it's important to, have boundaries with your projects and decide what you want to put on air and what not. A very interesting and sometimes difficult choice to make. So yeah, I'm just going to let you appreciate this for what it is. A really cool ink drawing. And maybe one day this character's story will be told. Well, I did title this video, Animator Tries Inktober for the first time. So it would be a bit disingenuous to not include at least some form of reflections chapter, accounting what the experience was like. So, what was it like to participate in the Inktober challenge? Well, for me, personally, it was a lot of fun. As someone who spends the majority of their time working on story projects, be it comics, animation, or just art of my original characters, it was super cool to switch gears with a challenge like this. The various and at times random feeling prompts definitely pushed me to make some unique stuff that I would not have otherwise done, some of which I am incredibly proud of. Throughout the month, I developed a sense of routine. Given that I usually do more documentary style videos, it was actually very nice to just post a few animations on my channel with no commentary, sort of as a break from the usual stuff. However, with all that said, it was not all sunshine and rainbows. During the month of October, I very much missed seeing steady progress on my short film, which during the month I did not work on at all. As I mentioned in the section when I was showing you the ink drawings, there were highs and lows when it came to motivation, but overall it was pretty good and consistent, considering I only felt like I truly slacked off on 2 illustrations. As far as more physical obstacles are concerned though, making an animation in such a short time span as a single day, or even just a few hours, is a challenge for sure. Especially if you want some semblance of quality in your work. Something that helped me navigate this was the fact that I had done a ton of 1-hour animation challenges in the past. Doing challenges where you have to make a cut from start to finish in only 1 hour is a really useful exercise, and I would encourage any animator to give it a try if you haven't already. It's exceedingly useful for cultivating an intuitive sense of how much you can get done in an hour in a very tactile manner. You know, you've actually physically done it. But the other thing it's great at is training the ability to adjust the scope of the animation to fit the time you have, rather than your solution to every problem being throw more time at the project to meet the quality benchmark you think you need. Related to the technical difficulties of having a limited scope from the daily deadline, there was definitely a haunting feeling from a lot of these animations where I know I could have done better if I spent more time on it. Now, I'm well aware I can go back and add more polish at some unspecified time in the future, but overall, I'm a pretty forward-thinking person, so unless I love it so much that I'm going to put the animation in a show reel / portfolio, the chances of me going back are, let's be real, pretty slim. I think the best way I tried to combat this was, interestingly enough, whenever possible, to choose subjects to animate that I had very little experience with. For example, I animated this water droplet, which I learned a lot from, since I personally am much more experienced with drawing fire than water. By the way, I have this really nice book on effects animation, which was a super helpful guide. Long story short, if you can venture into new territory with a limited amount of time, you're kind of bound to learn a lot, pretty much regardless of how good the work was. So with this attitude, if the quality might haunt me, because I knew it was possible to do better, I could still take comfort in the fact that I learned a lot about a new subject. Aside from feeling a little limited by the daily format for animating, it was pretty rough stepping back from my main project, that being the Tony Capitoa tribute short film, which at the time when I began Inktober, I was very, very accustomed to working on it and seeing consistent progress basically every day towards having a finished film. Although I do think this was a good thing, as now that I'm filling out the animations, I'm basically doing correctional drawings for my key animations with fresh eyes, since it's been roughly a month since I worked on it, correcting any minor errors I may have missed, or making small adjustments to make things such as the poses stronger. In other regards, it was really fun to have something small every day to share with people close to me, be it online friends, acquaintances, or just my family. There is something really cool about looking forward to see how other people will interpret the same prompt at the end of the day as well. With all that in mind, I don't really have too many dislikes or complaints, since overall it was a very positive experience for me. Changing the subject slightly, I'd like to point out the focused communal nature of Reddit and how it can be very useful for indie animators. If you're someone like me who spends most of their time on one platform, you may have overlooked how much reach you can get by simply putting your animation in a relevant community. Particularly these two, which both broke 1.3k views at the time of recording, which is a substantial increase compared to throwing them up on YouTube. albeit both were fan animations, so that plays a role into the mix as well. I'd also recommend posting them as a GIF file. That way the animation will just play while people are scrolling regardless of them having to click on it. But yeah, that was something that worked well for me. Who knows, perhaps it will work well for you too. Continuing on the theme of community, in the Animator Guild community, me and a few other people actually had a little subculture of everyone who was participating in Inktober. At one point, we had around 8 people, which was really cool. If you should ever choose to do a challenge like this, I would definitely recommend to rope a few friends in, as it makes things a lot more fun. Overall, it was really nice to get back into traditional art for a while. Break out the good old brush pen and build a bit of habit and tradition. Huge thank you to everyone in the Animator Guild community. I was on call with y'all for what I would wager is over half of these pieces I made. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, we shared a lot of laughs and a lot of good times throughout the month of October. I appreciate that. Before we close out, I'd like to say I have a website. And on this website, among all the other work I've put out there, is a gallery for this year's Inktober 2025 challenge. So if you want, you can browse that at your leisure. Well, that's all I have for you today. Stay tuned in for future projects like my tribute film, among other things. Peace!